New Brunswickers woke up today to political uncertainty following last night's election. No party secured a majority, and two parties are locked in basically a dead heat. While the Liberals took 22,000 more votes than the PCs took one more seat than the Liberals. So who will lead the province? It's likely all going to come down to two vastly different third parties who are in positions to play the kingmaker. And the CBC's own kingmaker, Eric Grenier, is here to give us a look at what's in store. Eric, when we talked yesterday, thanks for being here, but when we talked yesterday, you predicted that this would be a night full of surprises, and it was.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It really came down literally to the last poll that flipped the seat that made the difference between the PCs and the Liberals. The PCs winning 22 and the Liberals winning 21 seats. Let's look at those numbers from the election. You can see that it was very close, and the People's Alliance, which is a conservative populist party, won 3 seats. The Greens won 3 seats. That's a breakthrough. The Greens had 1 seat in the last legislature. The People's Alliance had none. But look at the popular vote. There was 31.9% for the PCs. They dropped about 2 points from 2014. The Liberals, they had 37.8%. They dropped around 4 points. The People's Alliance had 2.1% of the vote in 2014. They jumped 10 points from really fringe nowhere to winning 3 seats, and for a while leading in 4. And then the Greens also had a big jump. They had just under 7% in the last election. And the NDP fell from 13%, so a big drop for them. But a lot of change on the map. And like I said, we were watching last night the votes go back and forth in this one seat in the Miramichi area, and it's the one that made the difference at the very last moment.
Can we bring, if possible, that board back up? Because I want to ask you about the popular vote numbers and how they translated to seats. I mean, the Liberals ended up getting 7% more than the PCs in the popular vote, but it didn't translate. Why not?
Well, it's been an issue for the Liberals. They have a historical inefficient vote. So yes, they won by a pretty substantial margin. The last time we've seen in 2006, the Liberals had won the most seats, though they lost the popular vote. But in that one, it was a few tenths of a percentage point. Here you can see it was a big gap. And this is because of the linguistic split. The Liberals did very well among Francophone New Brunswickers. Among the most Francophone seats, they won those by an average of 35 points. So they ran up the numbers in northern New Brunswick and in the Dieppe, the southeast of the province, winning by very big margins, running up their popular vote total, but losing a lot of seats in Fredericton, St. John, in rural southern New Brunswick that is predominantly Anglophone. And because the PC vote was much more concentrated in that area of the province, they were able to win more seats, even though they lost the vote by a pretty substantial margin. For the Liberals, if they would have won, to win a majority government, they likely needed to win the popular vote by about 9 points, which shows just how unbalanced the province is in terms of that linguistic divide and what it turned out in terms of the outcome. And the influence of the Greens and the People's Alliance, a lot of vote splits that in some cases worked against the PCs and also worked against the Liberals. You could make the argument, and I'm sure they will be making the argument, that those votes for those other parties each cost them a majority government.
Speaking of arguments, Brian Gallant, the Liberal leader, is saying that he's going to reconvene the legislature and figure out what happens after that. Blaine Higgs is saying, the PC leader, that can't happen. That can't even be decided until the recounts are completed October 5th. From your vantage point, what are the various ways it can play out next?
Yeah, it's confusing to even know what happened today. It was confusing to know what happened yesterday and what's going to be happening. But yes, Brian Gallant saying he could continue governing, Blaine Higgs contesting that. So we're going to have to wait and see. Because there were at least 2 seats where the margin was, if I'm not mistaken, about 11 votes. So we're talking about recounts that could flip things, that could actually, in one of the cases, give the Liberals an extra seat. That's very rare that happens, but still those recounts have to take place. Then it does sound like Brian Gallant is going to try to test confidence in the legislature. He'll need to get the support from the Greens and presumably some either from the People's Alliance or the PCs to get him to that 25 vote mark he would need. It's hard to see how that'll work. He's already said he's a bit more warm to the Green Party, not to the People's Alliance because of its position on duality and bilingualism. He says that's not a party he can work with. Whereas Blaine Higgs is saying that he can work on issue by issue basis. It's really hard to see how these numbers work out. We did this in British Columbia last year. All the question about the speaker and how that takes a vote off the table as well. Maybe this will last a long while. Maybe it won't. New Brunswick hasn't had a minority government since 1920. Wow. So it's really untested waters here for New Brunswick.
For sure. All right. Thanks a lot, Eric. CBC's Eric Grenier. So how are the political leaders responding to this stalemate? Have conversations begun with third-party leaders? Joining me now from Quispamsis, New Brunswick, Progressive Conservative leader Blaine Higgs. Hi, Mr. Higgs. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Mr. Higgs, the Premier, or Mr. Gallant, says that the Lieutenant Governor has given him permission to continue on as Premier and reconvene the legislature. I know you reached out to the Lieutenant Governor as well. What did she tell you?
Well, the message we got from the office is that they're not making any decisions in that regard until the recount is finalized, because there's a couple of very close ridings. And so that'll be completed by October 5th. And so no decisions had been made on next steps until after that. So that's the message we got directly from the office, and that was actually just shortly after Brian Gallant had made his statement.
So what happens if Mr. Gallant does say that he's going to reconvene the legislature? What are you going to do?
Well, it's not his choice. I mean, it becomes a case of whether the Lieutenant Governor approves that. And at this point, she hasn't done so. It'll be something decision will be made on October 5th. So if she makes that decision and says, okay, well, now we will allow that to happen, or I plan to be meeting with the LG in the next couple of days, and we'll discuss other options. And so we feel that we're a government in waiting, so to speak, and Brian Gallant is trying to hold on to his job for as long as he possibly can.
I was listening to the press conference that you just gave, and you told reporters there that you consider yourself Premier designate. Doesn't Mr. Gallant, though, have the right to test the confidence of the legislature?
Well, yes, he in the exclusive sense, I guess you could say that. But by convention, typically when a governing party has less seats than the other party, they do concede that they no longer are government. And in this situation, we've had a very solid, strong voice from the people of the province, and electing two other parties and strengthening their presence in the legislature. So I mean, I think it's very clear that Brian Gallant has lost his mandate, and yes, I have the opportunity and the challenge to form a minority government, and I guess I'm waiting to do just that.
In the meantime, if you are able to form that minority government, have you reached out to the leaders of, for example, the Green Party and the People's Alliance?
Well, I have talked to Mr. Coon, and I did that this morning, and he called me last night, which was very nice, and I hope to be talking to Chris Austin in some point in the near future as well, because my whole platform was based on working with people to get results, and I actually, as I said earlier, I'm kind of excited about the opportunity for New Brunswick here, because we've had a political situation here. I wrote an article about politics as a business unto itself, and I also stated during my leadership numerous times that the single biggest barrier to our province's success is politics. So I'm not trying to, Brian Gallant is in desperation trying to hang on to his job, and I just want to get on with it and do the job for the province and that the people deserve. With
respect, aren't you kind of putting, I guess, a positive spin on, I mean, yes, you did win one more seat, but you didn't receive a resounding mandate. Obviously, people in New Brunswick are not wholeheartedly endorsing, at least the majority of them, what you campaigned on.
No, you're absolutely right. It's not a majority government that I was hoping for, or a resounding victory in that sense, but nonetheless, it is a victory, and it does state too, very clearly about the opportunity we have to think differently about serving the people of our province. So my message, if anyone went back, looked at the platform, looked at my campaign, looked at what I was messaging, I think in many ways people thought, well, it's too good to be true coming out of a traditional party. But it isn't. I had a career doing something long before I get into politics, and I'm not doing this for another career. I'm doing this to really save our province. So as I say, I'm excited about working with other parties, because they'll have new views and new opportunities, and we'll make this work.
There are certainly areas of commonality, but some aspects of some of those platforms are controversial. And for example, I'd point to the promise from the People's Alliance to eliminate language duality in government services. Can you work with a party that campaigned on a promise like that?
Well, I mean, there are fundamental foundational rights that we have in New Brunswick. I mean, in our Constitution and in our party's aims and principles, and they are not up for negotiation, and we're not going to be debating those. So, that will be an area that we'll say, well, let's just not focus on that, because that's not a negotiating point. It's not a discussion point. Let's focus on the things that we do agree on. And I find people spend a lot of time and energy focused on things they don't agree on. Meanwhile, all these other things that can help rebuild our province get lost. Well, I don't intend to spend time on those issues. I intend to spend time on the issues that we can agree on and the things that we can move forward. And we'll work on the other stuff, and I'm sure opinions will change and in relation to what we can do in our province. We have an opportunity in New Brunswick like no other, and it's unfortunate that after so long a time we've kind of squandered our potential by dividing our province, and we see it electorally, we see it in many ways. Well, I'm not focused on division, I'm focused on putting us together.
Are you worried, though, about those parties, and particularly, let's say, that one, being in a position of power, holding essentially the balance of power, and using points like that or positions like that as leverage?
Well, I'm not actually worried. I don't worry about very much, actually. I am concerned about our province, and I'm concerned about the opportunity we have to work together in the province. So yes, they will bring forth items that I won't agree with, and we're going to see that in probably a number of issues. But I am going to try to set an agenda that basically would say, let's look at the party platforms, let's pick out the top 5 items that we can agree on, and let's focus on that. Let's not spend time arguing about things that we disagree. So I'm concerned for the province, which I believe they have concern for the province as well, and because their candidates worked hard too, and they got elected. So I think they got elected more on any one issue. They got elected because the people thought that they would bring a different voice to the legislature. Well, I want to be part of that different voice because that's how I felt from my beginning in politics.
If it so happens that the legislature is reconvened and a vote is held and Brian Gallant, or whatever the situation is, goes down and another election essentially is called, can your party afford to run another campaign right now?
Well, it isn't about another election. Actually, as I understand the process, so if he succeeds in putting it off and bringing the legislature forward in November, then if he's voted down at that point in time, so he loses confidence of the legislature, the Lieutenant Governor will look to me and say, okay, so you are the government in waiting, and you need to now form a minority government and work with the other parties to achieve that. So it won't go right to an election at all. It'll go to a situation that we could avoid, kind of wasting time over the next couple of months. And that's where we'd be in December, let's say, if he calls back in November, if he gets that opportunity. So we'll just be prolonging the inevitable, and I would get a chance at that time to form a government with a minority situation, under a minority situation.
Is it your preference, though, that there not be an election? Another one?
Oh, well, no, I don't think anyone wants to go through another election. And yes, that is my preference. I don't want to go through another election. I don't think the people in the province want to go through another election. It's a grueling process. Yes, it's expensive. But I think we need to listen to what the people have told us, and let's react to that. Let's just say, okay, we've got what we got, because people haven't been listening for too long now in the political circles. So let's find a way to make something happen for New Brunswick, because there is a sense of urgency in this province. I've felt it for a long time, and I think the people have said to the other parties, we have a sense of urgency. And the only one that doesn't seem to get it is Brian Gallant himself.
Okay, Mr. Higgs, I'm going to leave it there, but thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome, and thank you.
That was New Brunswick PC Leader Blaine Higgs. We also requested an interview with Liberal Leader Brian Gallant, but he was not available. Earlier today, he emerged from a meeting with the province's Lieutenant Governor, and had this to say.
She has confirmed what experts have told many of you and told New Brunswickers through the media, that indeed we are still the government and I'm still the Premier until we lose the confidence of the House. She has granted us the opportunity to face the legislature to see if we can maintain the confidence of the House. Very much appreciated the discussion on exactly the mechanics of all of that, and of course we would make sure that we would meet with her at any point in time if there's any change in terms of where all of the respective parties sit, and on any possibility of having the gaining of or the maintaining of the confidence of the House, or the losing of the confidence of the House. And I want to be very clear. I humbly accept the very strong message New Brunswickers sent last night. They want things to be different. They've sent in different parties than we've seen in the past. They increased the seat count for the Greens. There's an indication, whether it be on the left or the right, that people want to see changes in the way that government is done here in the province. They have given no one a majority government, and they're asking us to figure out, as adults, how we can govern together in the legislature, and we will try exactly to do that, to make sure that we listen to the very loud message New Brunswickers sent us last night.